Welcome to the Explainer. Have you ever landed in a new city and just felt that overwhelming, almost unearned sense of modern supremacy? You step off the plane, you're exhausted, but you're assured. You've got that quiet confidence you really only get when everything in the world is supposed to be, well, easy. You pull out your phone, open an app, and within seconds, boom, you've secured a ride to your hotel. It's routine. Honestly, it's almost boring in its predictability. But today we're going to look at a fascinating firsthand account that completely shatters that illusion. We're going to break down exactly what happens when the frictionless promise of modern technology violently collides with the chaotic, highly regulated reality of the actual world. So let's dive right into this by exploring that mundane predictability of modern travel apps. The author of our source material describes landing in Istanbul and just marveling at how seamless travel has become. We are talking about an era where friction has supposedly been engineered entirely out of our lives, especially during these small transitions, like getting from an airport terminal to a hotel lobby. You don't need to know the language, you don't need local currency, and you definitely don't need to haggle. You literally just press a button.
All right, Section 1, the illusion of seamlessness.
The sheer contrast here is just fascinating. The author notes it initially took less than 10 seconds to book the Uber. They got that small, highly satisfying visual confirmation on their screen. Done. Easy, right? Well, actually, scratch that, because that expectation was about to get totally steamrolled by reality. And this brilliantly illustrates the immediate clash between the frictionless promise of Silicon Valley and the high-friction analog reality of the streets. What was supposed to be a 10-second digital transaction morphed into a 20-minute physical ordeal dragging heavy luggage. And why? Because as it turns out, algorithms don't really account for local airport politics. Moving on to Section 2, the unintentional scavenger hunt, guided out of sight. That seamless illusion, it was absolutely shattered the moment the first unexpected message pinged on the author's phone. Where are you? Now, the traveler replied with their exact, precise location right at the arrivals area, but the app's smooth interface was suddenly hijacked by very manual, very cryptic human instructions. Step 1, walk 200 meters to the last gate. Step 2, exit the police checkpoint. Step 3, go to the bus stop. Suddenly, the passenger was trapped in this rigid set of unquestionable commands. It shifted from being slightly inconvenient to quietly strange. They were literally following clues in a scavenger hunt they never actually agreed to join, all delivered through the chat feature of a multi-billion-dollar app. And this ordeal quickly escalated into something truly absurd. Let's look at the timeline. At 0 minutes, the traveler is right where they're supposed to be, funneled out of arrivals. By 10 minutes, they are receiving dozens of messages nudging them further and further away from the airport's ordered chaos. And by 20 minutes, they are literally dodging highway traffic. The author describes crossing a wide dual carriageway with cars just rushing past with absolutely no concern for pedestrians. This wasn't a casual stroll. This was a test of commitment. The physical toll of this 20-minute trek was escalating, dragging luggage through the heat, all because the driver simply couldn't legally pick them up at the official airport curb.
So the absolutely crucial point here is this realization that slowly dawned on the traveler. They hadn't just booked a ride. No, they were being guided out of sight, away from official pickup zones and far away from police scrutiny. They had been, quite unintentionally, recruited into a workaround. They became an active accomplice in bypassing local transport laws. You press a button for convenience, and you become an accessory to an illicit gig economy operation. It's a fascinating psychological shift when you really think about it. Which brings us to Section 3, high-speed translation roulette, high-speed absurdity.
Now, you would expect an apology at this point, right? Or at least some acknowledgement of the absurd, sweaty marathon you just ran. But no, the author notes there was just a quick nod and they were off. And then the second act of this drama kicks into gear. The driver didn't speak English. Now, obviously, that's not unusual when traveling, but his solution for bridging that communication gap was terrifically inventive and utterly terrifying. He would speak into Google Translate in Turkish, wait for the app to process his words, and then turn his entire upper body towards the passenger in the back seat just to show them the screen. Just imagine the existential dread of this routine. As our source material vividly describes, every single time, sentence after sentence, eyes off the road, attention split. And keep in mind, he was doing this while traveling at what felt like motorway speeds. The car would drift just enough to make the passenger acutely aware of how incredibly fragile this entire arrangement was. The traveler found themselves practically driving from the back seat, watching the road for both of them, bracing their body every single time the driver twisted around, just praying that the next translated sentence wouldn't magically coincide with a sharp bend or a sudden stop in traffic. All right, Section 4. The driver's defiance, an act of rebellion.
So, what was he actually saying? Well, the content of these translated messages only added to the complete surrealism of the ride. The driver wasn't making small talk about the weather or recommending local restaurants. He was delivering a passionate manifesto about the realities of the gig economy. Through these high-speed bursts of translation, he argued that the ride-hailing app takes way too large a commission. He claimed the official airport taxis, the exact ones he had just forced the passenger to bypass, were a massive ripoff. And most importantly, he explained that drivers like him simply must outsmart the system to survive. The author noted a real sense of rebellious pride in the driver. This whole elaborate, incredibly stressful pickup operation wasn't just a hustle. To him, it was a personal act of defiance against a rigged system.
And then, right in the middle of all this, came the ultimate pivot. Mid-highway, amidst the drifting lanes and the terrifying screen sharing, the driver pitched his actual business model. Next time, you call me. Half price, no Uber. It is an incredible moment. Think about it. He used the app to acquire the customer, took them on a covert extraction mission, and was now trying to cut the app out entirely for the return trip. The passenger nodded, mostly because agreeing felt like the absolute safest way to keep the driver calm and maybe, just maybe, get his eyes back on the road. But internally, the passenger was seriously wondering if voluntarily repeating this experience, the covert pickup, the existential dread, the high-speed translation exchanges, was truly worth getting the ride for half price.
Finally, we arrive at Section 5, the ultimate dilemma, with that return flight looming.
The buildings and lights of Istanbul finally began to gather around them. The promise of arrival was so close. But of course, this arrival came with one final, massive caveat. The driver pulled over a full 12 minutes away from the destination. It was close enough to claim he got them to the general area, but far enough away to remain perfectly, hilariously consistent with the entire theme of this trip. Almost, but not quite. The passenger stepped out, luggage bag in hand, and watched the car disappear into the city traffic as if literally nothing out of the ordinary had just occurred. Let's just take a step back and summarize what we've actually learned from this incredible account. What started as a completely routine request for a simple, frictionless ride, literally a 10-second digital tap, spiraled into something magnificent and absurd. It turned into a sweaty walking tour of a dual carriageway. It became a highly stressful, high-speed masterclass in local transport politics and gig economy economics. And above all, it was the ultimate trust exercise with Google Translate. It was borderline unsafe, absolutely ridiculous, and yet completely unforgettable. And that brings us to the final, lingering question. As the authors stood there, a 12-minute walk from their hotel, looking ahead to their eventual return flight to the airport, they faced a very real dilemma. A dilemma that perfectly captures the tension between the pristine algorithms on our phones and the messy, chaotic reality of human survival. Do you call the rogue driver again, save the money, and embrace the chaos? Or do you take your chances with the official, sanctioned system that the driver swore was a complete ripoff? It forces all of us to ask, what cost are we actually willing to pay for convenience, and how much friction is truly hidden just beneath the surface of our seamless technology? Think about that the next time you tap Book Ride. Thanks for joining me on this explainer.